Welcome to the Occult Rejects. This episode, we got a couple of rejects with us, and we got a brand new guest, somebody we haven't had on before. But before I introduce Frater RC, let me introduce the other rejects joining me. And we got my man, Headless Giant. What is going on, sir?
How you doing? You can find me at the Headless Giant on Twitter, on YouTube, on Rumble now, and you can also find my shows on Monday night. We do Monday Alchemy with Eros Up. She was just on. She's a really solid person to have on there. And Tuesdays we've got 777 with Nick, and Thursdays we've got the Magical Mailbag. Eros is supposed to be making an announcement on the mailbag this Thursday, so. She's got that video coming out, so that's going to be awesome. So tune in for that tomorrow. And Sundays, Trialogues with Ethan. And at some point during the week, I do a show with Jules called The Rust of God. So find that whenever it comes out.
That's really killer series if you always checked it out.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us, Ellis. I really appreciate it. And we got my other man, Jin. What is going on, sir? How are you?
What is up? Cardinal Electric Head 93, Mr. 93, boss. I'll do all of your titles today. Obviously, we just did 2 hardcore hours on speculative Kabbalah, in lieu of Madam Rose. I think we did a much better show, but that's
I think it was a much more in-depth conversation. Just put it
grown up. So if people want to check me out, they can check me out at Threshold Saints on IG and X Twitter, as well as at my personal account at Wukong Reborn, WUKONG Reborn. Obviously, we do have a Grey Lodge space on this Friday, speculative, or Friday Night Gnostic Mass. I don't know what we're going to discuss today, or that day, but it'll be something cool, I promise. And I just dropped an episode with Greg Kaminsky, obviously Ike, from the Arcanum podcast, Ike Baker. Props to you, Ike. He's in the comments, and he's coming on pretty soon in the end of the month. And I got lots of shit going on, and just watch the space because I'm doing things. Thank you guys, and I'm really excited. And Frater RC, thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Nick, for inviting me because I'm actually really excited for this one. I don't know that much about Enochian Magick, just full disclosure, but I'm interested to learn.
Yeah, me too. And we got my man Robbie Marks. Oh, no, of course. No, thank you. And Robbie Marks, please, sir, the storyteller himself. Let everybody know what's up with you.
Hey, how's everybody doing out there? Good to come hang out. I am R. Marks, or Robbie Marks. I'm an artist, illustrator, researcher. I'm working on a book, working on illustrations for that book now. I also have my MetaMindcast podcast if you want to check that out. You can check out all my links at Linktree RMARX, and that'll pull up everything for you. And yeah, I'm excited for this too. Enochian Magick is something that I've kind of delved in and out of over the years numerous times, and this is going to be a fun one. Great to meet you, Frater RC.
Yes, and finally the guest himself. We got Frater RC from the Hermetic podcast. Please, sir, let everybody know what your deal is, and let everybody know what you plug whatever you want, please.
I'm Frater RC. Have the Hermetic podcast. Go to hermeticpodcast.com for more of that. And I have a little cyber guild in there that you can join for free and do free classes, free workshops, free hangouts. Also on YouTube. And if you are sick and tired of free stuff, then I host conferences, workshops, and retreats through the Arcane Research Society for an annual membership so that we can function internationally. And EnochiaCon has been quite successful the last 2 years, despite the challenges of the world. So next year will be even bigger. Go to arcaneresearchsociety.com/2026 and see the insane guests and workshops we will have there, including Scott Michael Stenwick, another Enochian expert, who will be doing a special workshop on Kako diamonds and using them for wealth, which is going to be wild and limited to only 20 people. So sign up today.
Wow, that's awesome, man. Nice.
How do you like them apples?
Yeah, I like it. Please, if you don't mind, I guess, I normally ask most people when it comes to the occult, which are most guests anyway. But I guess, what got you started to, how did you end up turning into Frater RC? How did that happen?
Yeah, good question. I've thought about this a lot as I navigate middle age. And it's funny how you look back on life and realize in retrospect, maybe you didn't have as many choices or as much agency as you thought. I don't know if any of you have ever looked back on your lives and had that experience and been like, oh, I didn't have that many choices in how I got here. That where I'm at is a bad place. It's just you can see the factors that conditioned your life. So 7 years old, growing up in a yoga cult, my parents practiced yoga at least 2 hours a day, meditating. And by age 7, I got initiated, had a beautiful ceremony. Age 10, got another initiation. And then my parents split up, and that sent me on a self-discovery quest because, if it didn't work for them, then why would it work for me, was my thinking at the time. And I discovered Wicca, Druidry, esotericism in general, the occult, and started practicing things until I found something that worked. And what worked was the Golden Dawn system. What worked was Enochian Magick and other specific practices. Joined the Golden Dawn when I was 15. Got a dispensation to join after much effort, and including my parent being interviewed and signing a waiver, in case anyone touched me in a bad place, then there was some protection for them. Looking back, I can't believe they initiated me so young, but I was definitely worthy. And I guess they made the right call, because look at I've stayed in it the rest of my life and contributed as much as I can to the field of study. And Enochian Magick is a particular passion of mine, mainly because I think it's so under studied, under researched, and most of the efforts to popularize it have led to it being reduced rather than explored in its original fullness. Let's put it that way. So there's a synopsis of how I got to where I'm at. I certainly tried my life, but I did other things. Like I after grad school, I went to seminary, got a master's of divinity at UBC, and I took a job as a game designer for a card and board game company. But then the recession happened, and everyone I knew went bankrupt. I worked for a couple game companies, but then there was no work. So it's like every time, based on when I was born, every time I started to get somewhere in a mainstream field of labor, the world said no, like unequivocally, including when, things were before COVID, things were starting to look good. I was doing some voluntary work at a church in California and applying to college jobs. Then COVID happened. Now, after COVID, I tried to get another college job. They said, look, there's just no room for people who look like you.
Oh, what the fuck does that mean?
Discriminatory.
They call people like me at universities here three strikers. Isn't that a charming title? A three striker, like a criminal.
Oh, shit.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm done
You know
not
what?
talking about it, if you could tell.
You said before not enough people, I guess, at studying Enochian or something along those lines. You think what do you think the reason for that is? Because it might actually be too intimidating to people?
Well, yeah, there's always going to be a tendency to reduce things to its simpler forms, and we've done that now with Enochian Magick, right? We've given as much entry level text as I think anyone could ever want for it, and I think what it's demanding now is deeper study rather than people just brushing off the nuances and complexities. The things that have remained unexplored are the very complicated aspects of it. So the practice is as simple as most magical practices to get involved in, but there's just a lot of depth that we haven't actually looked at yet. And some people are interested in the using AI to look at the nuances of some of the charts that just make no sense, really. Ostensibly, they're just complex number and letter charts. And maybe that's one avenue that some people are exploring. There's the other avenue of the parts of the earth, the political magic aspect of it, which, again, some people say it's nonsense and doesn't work. And some people, like Scott Stenwick, have charts and evidence that it works, especially statistically, by focusing on smaller numbers, if you like. I don't know how to say it in a mathematical way, but you don't want to, if you're going to use it for lotteries, for example. He points out, use it magic on small lotteries, not on the national one or on the federal one. Use it in a smaller pool, and same as affecting elections or anything like that. And so that's another avenue that could be explored in it. That's very exciting,
Well,
if you ask me, given the political instability in the world and the amount of corrupt people that go into politics. If there's any good use for Enochian political magic, it could maybe be to weed out corruption and encourage less corrupt people to want to be our leaders.
on that angle, there is a definite political angle to the Enochian channeled material that Dee was getting at the time. Like, they were very explicit about the end of the world. What role do you think some of these angelic entities may be having in current political events?
I think too many to be calculated, really. I think it's not so much a matter of skirmishes, but all out, chaos. When you look at the world in terms of, if you look at reality in terms of an animistic view of everything being filled with daimones, which is a hermetic view of the world, right? Everything is, every aspect of everything has daimones, many, 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 infinite. How many? We can't say. Angels, spirits, all of these things. And the Hermetica just calls them all daimones. It might distinguish between some beings like star gods or angels and other things like that, but generally it calls them just spirits. And so if all of reality is suffused with spirit and consciousness and intelligences, then I think it's a massive array. It's overwhelming in my experience personally, and which is why I think the techniques of magic are so important. And I think that's also why the techniques of magic have, relatively speaking, remained completely unchanged over time. Yeah, you hear a lot of people, especially in this day and age, say, oh, the thing about magic is you get to make up your own version of it, and it can be whatever you want, and it's up to you. But it's like the history of magic adamantly speaks against that reality. The history of magic is a series of techniques that we see, especially carried in the Western Solomonic traditions. The features are unchanged, and even academics admit this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have approved Dr. Stephen Skinner's PhD when he applied. That's what he proved in his PhD. He's like, look at how nothing's changed in magic. These key techniques, these key practices, these key rules haven't changed. And when people try to change them, they revert back, almost as if these new fangled attempts to deviate from what works don't work. And I think that is the case with a lot of when people try to sort of solipsistically just reform everything to their own species of practice. I think that's why you see a lot of that stuff. Yeah, not really working and just leading to delusion.
Before I start asking questions like this on the side, actually, if you don't mind, I hate to ask you to try to maybe give a basic idea of guess what is Enochian magic for people who don't even know what this is.
Well, technically speaking, Enochian Magick is the name that the Golden Dawn gave to their version of Dee and Kelly's angelical magic. So if you want to be pedantic, and sometimes it's fun to be pedantic, of course, and well, also sometimes very helpful. So this, for example, on screen you have here is one of Westcott's wild and psychedelic tablets. Here's another Golden Dawn tablet. Okay. So the Golden Dawn took their version of Dee and Kelly's magic, changed it a little bit with the guidance of the secret chiefs of their order, the spirit guides of their order, or their own higher consciousness, their own nous, probably a mixture of all of those things, and adapted it to meet the needs to fit into their system, to build the system upon it, is what it looks like to me, because the initiations completely hinge on Enochian magic. So that's what the Golden Dawn did. They gave the name, they came up with the name Enochian Magick. So though I don't mind, obviously the name Enochian Magick is used as a catch-all term, any variety of Dee and Kelly's magic, right? So in colloquial terms, Enochian Magick refers to all of it. But it's very wrong to refer to the Golden Dawn magic as Enochian Magick, as Neo-Enochian Magick, because they're the ones who made up that name for their version, right? If you made something up and gave it a name, it would be pretty insulting for me to come along and say, oh no, you're just doing Neo, whatever you called it. It's like, no, that's what you call this. So stop calling Golden Dawn magic Neo-Enochian. That's what you refer to technically. Anything after that, anything based on Golden Dawn magic that changes or distorts it or it reinterprets it would be accurately called Neo-Enochian magic. But for our parlance, Enochian magic refers to the magic that Dee and Kelly scried from the angels, who are the 4 archangels, and showed them lesser aspects of themselves, the spirits that are composing the archangelic bodies, these vast, cosmic intelligences and beings and daimones, and showed us nuanced and detailed lesser spirits that compose them and how to interact with that matrix of reality through this angelical spirit language. And whether people want to see them as angels or not, I think is less important, though you can't deny the fact that it comes from the 4 archangels. You pray to the 4 archangels to access this magic. You pray to Jesus Christ to protect you and give you authority to access this magic. And what I think a lot of people get confused about is they think it's dangerous, but they think it's dangerous after they strip out all of that. So they strip out all the stretching. They strip out, putting on tensor bandages for weak ankles. They take away all the safety and guardrails. They avoid any preparations that are at all described by the spirits to do this. And then they just jump in to and hoping for the best. And that of course I find hilarious, but also sad. So we're trying to re-educate people as to a fuller understanding of the system.
So each one of these tablets represent one of the 4 elements, and each one of those elements is subdivided up over and over again into these different squares, and those different squares represent a type of angelic intelligence of that square, which has the elemental effects and the letter of because it's all broken down into letter. But that's another question I had. I was never aware of the completion of the Enochian language. Isn't there a lot more channeling that needs to take place to actually come up with a working language?
Well, it's a magical language. It's not a working language. It's not a language. It's not a human language. It's a spiritual language. As far as, everyone who engages with it will probably channel, scry, or perhaps bring through some new information. That's certainly possible. But I don't think there's a tremendous amount of value in it. Like we've been given tools. You can reinvent those tools if you want, there's a reason to, but what would be the reason? Now, you mentioned something else. The tablets don't represent elements. That's only in the Golden Dawn version of the system that the tablets represent elements. In the original version, every single quadrant of the Great Table, which can be divided into tablets, every quadrant has all 4 elements on it. Now, of course, you could say, well, in the Golden Dawn elemental version of the system, all 4 elements are there in the sub-elements as well. It's like, yes, of course, because everything's actually everywhere. And we break things up differently for the maps that we use to navigate this ultimately unknowable terrain.
I think
Very
it's
true.
interesting. I think it's interesting when you go back into Dee and Kelly's works, the descriptions of these forces and how he details each individual one and moving through, and they're very reflective of the entities and the angelic and different building block archonic forces within the Enochian texts, and kind of carrying that forward into this system of communication.
Yeah, I don't know much about archonic forces. In the Hermetic system, archons are positive planetary forces there to aid and guide the soul. But most of the time I hear archons said is in the sense of opposing forces, or entities that are there to prevent us from doing something. I don't know. I'm not too versed in those forms of Christian Gnosticism myself. Again, I've been on the Hermetic path since I was a young teenager, so I've sort of stayed in my lane, you could say. I wandered off a bit into the bardic world, of course, and I'm glad I did. Spent almost 20 years as a full-time musician, and yeah, no regrets there. But yeah, you got me on the Archons. I don't know how to really yeah, I don't know what to make of
I'm just
that
kind
version.
of trying to express the idea that these are different energetic forces within the various, like they have different extents of power in I don't want to say in ascending and descending order, but kind of in their place in the universe.
Okay. Yeah. I don't work with Archons in any way personally. So yeah, I don't know what to say about Archons. I've never worked with Archons. I don't have any Archons in my consciousness at any point in time.
Right.
Except when I occasionally hear other people talk about their roles. And yeah, so are there Archons in the Enochian system? Maybe. I have not come across any as such. There's kings and princes of the planets, and I work a lot with those. I guess that some people might say that they're similar to Archons, but I tend to not conflate systems too much because it can, get confusing, needlessly so sometimes. But that's fascinating, fascinating stuff. There's definitely Archons in the Hermetic tradition, except they play a positive role there to challenge and guide the soul. The Hermetic path, unlike Gnostic paths, is incredibly optimistic and fundamentally believes that nature and materiality is a blessing and the full manifestation of God, rather than something negative or evil or debased.
Right.
I like that. Well said. When it comes to, I guess, Enochian magic, like, could you explain, I guess, maybe like what would be the reason people would even start looking into this as a form of magic?
Because I suppose maybe Wicca, got a little boring or simple, and you needed a challenge. You got tired of drawing down the moon, and we're like, what I need is lots of charts and numbers that basically make no sense. That's what I need. If that's where you're coming from, jump into Enochian Magic and away we go. But do you need it? Absolutely not. Now, once you've done an Enochian Magic, you might notice that the energy is slightly different than other forms of magic if you're able to sense such things. Yeah, so the sigillum Deamet here, it's funny. This is one of the sigil of God's truth, or of the truth of the true God. Sigillum means sigil, Dei means God, and Emet is the Hebrew word for truth spelt out in Latin or English. This is the one symbol that we're told not to ever look on outside of a state of holiness. This is the one symbol that we never share. Obviously, we live in a commercialized 21st century in which you can buy it on Etsy. So that's fine. It is what it is. I would recommend to an Enochian practitioner that once you have your Sigillo Deamet, the 5 of them, the little ones for under the table legs and the big one for the altar, I would recommend that you keep them in a, carefully wrapped up in a sacred place. And at that point, I would recommend maybe keeping that symbol as a sacred symbol. But yeah, as we know, we're in a post-sacred age that's perhaps trying to return to sacrality, but struggling with it.
Right. When you make your own objects, it's so much more meaningful. And I think this was supposed to be carved into wax seals. So carving it into a wax seal wouldn't be too hard. I mean, in terms of preparations for an altar, I think that's one of the easier ones. You just take it sector by sector and measure it out.
Oh, it's even easier than that, actually. We just did a winter workshop with Dr. Terry Burns and my buddy who built most of our table and did our wax tablets. He did them up pretty quickly by just putting a printed out image of them over top of the wax and using a ballpoint pen to trace over the lines, and that indents in the wax. And the great thing is, of course, the ballpoint pen also traces the lines as you do them, so you can see what you've done and what you haven't done. And he did remarkably detailed work that way, and much faster than than looking back and forth to an image and you know, engraving it with a piece of metal, which is what I've done in the past at great pain and suffering. So yeah, trace it over a piece of paper and done in a GIF.
What is it beeswax that it's supposed to be made out of?
Beeswax, very important that it's made of beeswax. Yeah.
Yeah, can you explain
Yeah, in the Enochian system, the spirits gave incredibly detailed instructions about what the tools and table and everything should be made of, what color fabrics like that go under the table, what goes over the table. So when you look at a fully table, all you see is a white cube essentially, with maybe a little bit of green silk underneath the legs, but you see white over top, and then you see a crystal. You see nothing else, right? And that is something most people aren't even aware of. But imagine how different that is than the, you know, most of the commercialized setups that you see. What a different mentality that puts you in when you think of a finished Enochian table not being like any of these things, but just being draped over with white cloth, the sigillums covered. All you see is a clear crystal sitting on top of a white draped cloth. And now the layers of cloth, I think, are very symbolically and spiritually important because they represent different layers of reality and energy and all of these sort of things in the nature of what this cube is. And Dr. Burns has gone to great length to explore the geometry and spiritual significance of all of these tools in the context of John Dee's greatest and most important work, his Monas Hieroglyphica, the hieroglyphic monad, which you can get from Ouroboros Press, edited and translated by Dr. Burns and Nancy Turner. And they did a great job bringing that text into a state of actual clarity for the modern reader. So yeah, the really traditionalist Enochian table, and I think I've said this enough so people know, do it how you want, do whatever you want, make notes, keep a diary, and let us know how it goes. That's the official position. I'm speaking for all of us on this. We don't mind do whatever you want. Just take notes and let us know. You know, if you do something daring and wild and creative and your life falls apart, just let us know. If you success and change the world, again, let us know. We are pragmatists, magicians for the most part. But when you consider the actual tradition, see, I was trained in Golden Dawn Enochian, and I love it. But when I actually was recommended by the spirits last time I was in Prague to consider the roots and where it came from and go back to the beginning, I started to see something very different, and something that for me as a Christian was really appealing, because Enochian magic is one of the few forms of magic that developed explicitly as a Christian form of magic.
Right.
Dee was trying to create with Enochian what he saw as Jews having with Hebrew, as Muslims having with Arabic, right? He thought the Christians deserved to have a language that was sacred just for them, and Latin, I suppose, didn't cut it for Dee. So Enochian was his answer. Now that's why he called it Adamic or Edenic or celestial or angelical. And the table's very beautiful. Yeah, so the table's made of sweet wood. The sigillums are made of wax. Wax is a very important magical tool. Of course, the wax ties into the bee symbolism of the nascent Rosicrucianism and Freemasonry that was only in its very early stages during Dee's lifetime. Freemasonry started in 1490. The first lodge 0, opened up in Scotland. So and if that was in the air already, Dee was not occurring in a vacuum. Dee emerged out of a culture of burgeoning secret societies and collaborations of mystics and magicians. The School of Night, for example, was active during his time that he was a part of. I don't know much about it. I'm trying to find out more. So I hope more scholars will dig into those things and find out more.
I've just heard of that recently, the School of Night. Just recently I came across it.
Yeah. It was, I guess it was a
Elizabethan
magic club.
Have you ever heard of Martinism? Martinism has that same sort of mystique all throughout the years. Yeah. Well, They have that same sort of.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know that how influential they were in a lot of new religions in the West, like Voodoo and Mormonism.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it really emerged around the same time as the Golden Dawn because through the work of Papoose, right? And then had it split apart quite quickly, is from my understanding, due to again a lot of political differences by the different founders and groups. But it hails back to Louis Claude de Saint Martin, but it just didn't become an actual organization till the 19th century. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of Martinism available to people, and it's very popular. It's a bit more, I think it's a bit more sacramental than the Golden Dawn, and a bit more explicitly religious. Though again, I don't want to speak for Martinists, as I'm not yet one.
Well,
There's
it's
also
funny,
a lot of different traditions.
the book that was written by San Martin was about the integration of the self with God. So it's like, what is this book? You're reading it, and it seems like it's from like the 1920s sort of positive thought movement, and this is from the 1770s. And so reading this on the integration of beings is really kind of enlightening as to what really spurred on a lot of the Rosicrucian stuff that came from the Caribbean up to Pennsylvania, with the Beverly Hall, and Amorg.
Well, Rosicrucianism started in 1614, right, in Germany. Yeah, not in the Caribbean, but
Beverly Randolph came from the Caribbean and brought it up to Pennsylvania. He was sort of the influence on the other end of the Atlantic.
Yeah, I would consider that very modern Rosicrucianism, very separate, completely separate from the. Yeah, it's a different thing. I think chronologically, how it was in the 17th century versus the 19th and 20th century. There's no evidence of any direct connection between groups back then and today, unless you consider Freemasonry to have sort of carried on the traditions a little bit. It's probably most evident Freemasonry being carried forward from the 17th century. But otherwise, I think most of the 19th and 20th century groups that we have are, more or less inspired by these other earlier movements, which I think, again, was the purpose of these movements. I don't think they necessarily represented the organized structures that today a lot of people like to imagine they represent. I think they were good ideas or inspirational ideas, like Louis Claude de Saint Martin. His teachings are very hermetic. This idea of meeting your angel and accessing your nous, your higher consciousness, which is a holy daimon, which is an angel, so that when you die, your soul gets, through its initiation, carried up with the daimon, and you become like a god, or even better than a god, actually, according to the Hermetica. Again, very optimistic, not just any old god, better than those gods. We become twice the regular sort of gods, star gods and dying gods. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And the whole process of reconciling yourself to that higher consciousness is the great work. That's what we call it, right? And purifying the lesser daimones of our souls. Scientology took that straight out of that idea, straight out of the Hermetica.
Bingo. Yep.
Fucking Scientologists.
We love you guys.
Sorry, I apologize for that. There are more home Scientologists than there are people that actually belong to the Church of Scientology, which I always thought was really interesting because of exactly what Frater RC said. There are so many hermetic principles, magical. I mean, Elrond was clearly a magician of at least intermediate to high order. So just in his knowledge, I'm not saying he was like a great worker or anything, but I think he knew a lot of shit. So yeah, he put a lot into that. So that's really interesting that a lot of people, and I think this is also true with Mormons, and to go back to Headless's comment about Martinism, well, there's a direct link between those two things as well. So there's so many people who may not even think of themselves as hermeticists or even knowing magic in any capacity, but actually have a very magical outlook on reality. Anyways, I'm sorry. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, Hubbard, learned some stuff from Jack Parsons, right? He showed up in Jack Parsons' life, uh, ran off with his wife, borrowed money, spent it on a boat, and called himself a captain while doing copious and obscene amounts of drugs all along the way, while creating a religion that is prohibited his followers from using drugs. This complete like there's a great documentary on YouTube that's up there on L. Ron Hubbard and drugs and the occult. You can just Google that on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
And you'll find it. And it keeps getting taken down, but people keep putting it back up. Chris Bennett, the author, put that together. And it's got at interviews with L. Ron Hubbard's son in it, talking about all the crazy drugs that he was doing and forcing his son to do and stuff. And it's sort of ironic, fast forward to modern day, and Katie Holmes complaining that she wasn't allowed to get an epidural during giving birth and stuff, right? It's the hypocrisy is shocking, but not surprising.
Right.
Something I wanted to ask
Drugs
you.
for me, not for thee.
Yeah. Oh, like how many of them forbid sex, but they're screwing everybody there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, they always do that shit. Whatever they're telling you not to do, that's exactly what the leader's doing. One thing I did want to ask you, not to put you on the spot, you had mentioned before, like differences in like the Enochian Magick, I guess, Golden Dawn and differences from other ones. You said you noticed a difference. Could you explain any of that, maybe?
Do you mean that just the technical differences of the system,
maybe.
The way it's
Yeah.
used in? Yeah, I mean they changed the colors of the tablets. They changed them to primarily representing elements, as opposed to direction. But again, those changes aren't the biggest deal in the world, because they come from this great table, and the great table is a way of laying out all of this stuff so that it maps into our mind in a way that we understand. One thing I get from reading the diaries is one of the things that makes it really believe that in the authenticity of the spirits they're talking to is the spirits frequently say things that just it doesn't make sense that you would come up with on your own. Well, first of all, the spirits forced Dee to do a lot of things he didn't want to do. Like when he first showed up, when Dee went to go talk to the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II after just arriving in town, Dee just wanted to play politics and maybe get support, financial support, and all this. But the angels were clearly show in the diaries. They're like, no, you have to go in, demand all these things of him, demand he change his life, demand he do these things, otherwise it's the end of the world. And Dee's like, please, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. And the spirits are like, well, it'll happen if you don't do what we say. So Dee, sure enough, Dee goes in and raves and rants like a madman, and Rudolph's like, who is this nut job? Let's get him out of here. And that was that was a decision that Dee made because of the spirits. And that's very interesting to me. Another time Dee said, when he's trying to sort of cut corners on the initiatory process that the angels are laying out to begin practicing Enochian magic, Dee's like, well, okay, do I really have to write a prayer to each one of these spirits prior to working with it to initiate myself into the watchtowers? And the spirits are like, yes, a short prayer from your heart, from your own good human mind will suffice, as God inspires you to do so. And he's like, well, he's such a systematizer. He really wants more detail. And he says, well, what would that look like? And the spirits are like, how would we know? We don't have a human mind. We don't even understand how you work. Like, don't ask us. We're part of God in a different way than you're part of God. And so if you have to write a prayer to God from your own soul and mind and inspiration, we wouldn't know what that looks like. Just like we can't, so this textual evidence of real alien consciousness that is not placating most of the time what the humans have as set up as their own sense of expectation, morality, or cultural norms, right? The spirits just don't care. And this is part of a lot of magical training, is training magicians how to handle spirits, because it's not that they don't necessarily have your best at heart. It's just they're not human. They don't know what it's like to be human. They can't communicate to you in a way that is necessarily always going to be beneficial for your flourishing in your life. They might have other priorities or limited points of view, just like we're limited in our points of view.
I wanted to ask also, like, is there, if you were to work with the tablet, is there any certain particular rituals that you would do prior? Or do?
Yeah, I recommend starting with the first aspect of the system that was laid forth, the Heptarchia Mystica, and I have a little intro course that you guys can check out on that if you go to enochiangrimoire.com, and that just gets you working with the grimoire. It's an introduction to grimoire magic in general through the Heptarchia Mystica, taking you step by step 10 days through your first operation. And the preparations for that, I think, are very clearly laid out in Dee's diaries, and the spirits make it very clear what you should do to begin that process. And once you've gotten familiar with it, I think then you can look towards the watchtowers and the watchtower initiation. Now I'm speaking purely for those who are interested in taking a traditional approach to the system. And in that approach, this is a journey that would take up many years of your life. You can do what a lot of people have done in the last several decades and just chop it up and do little bits and bobs and hope for the best, of course. That's just not what I'm interested in doing anymore. So approaching it cautiously and also faithfully with the prayers and practices, so that you grow in closeness to God through these spirits. These archangels have laid forth these matrices of spirits for us to better know the archangels. That's how I look at them. We've been doing the evocation of the archangels in the lesser ritual of the pentagram for many years, a lot of us. But how do we get to know these angels better, and especially archangels? Well, in the Enochian system, they've laid forth a path that can be easily and clearly walked. And the initiatory journey, the 19-day initiation to initiate yourself into the watchtower, it is a self-initiation. Like most great initiations, it's a self-initiation, similar to the Abramelin. And you write out all these prayers. You do these prayers daily in the morning at sunrise. Just like in Enochian Magick, it seems that when you have this altar set up, the table, the holy table of practice, and it's all covered in white, my own research has uncovered that it looks like you're meant to do it in the sunshine. So all these people, like myself included, who have been doing Enochian Magick by candlelight in dark black-walled temples for decades, may have been missing out on a major aspect of effectiveness by not doing these rituals in the sunshine. So there's some new information that I found in a unpublished manuscript with and then confirmed its veracity with the help of Joseph Peterson and some other scholars who were like, yep, yeah, you're not crazy. That looks like what you found. So, who knows? Try it out and find out. Did I answer the question?
Yeah. Unless there was anything else you left out. I don't know. You did mention the watchtower ritual.
Well, the watchtower ritual is a Golden Dawn ritual made by Regardi.
Oh,
he was only in the Golden Dawn for like less than 2 years.
Really? He only was, huh?
Yeah, he wasn't really interested in being trained at all. He just sort of showed up the bare minimum to get the documents and see the initiation ceremonies. And despite it being a very highly functional and temple full of amazing people that he could have learned from and worked with, he didn't seem that interested. But he then did try to become the secretary for the New Zealand temple that he had heard about. And of course, when they heard about his conduct in the England temple that initiated him, they were not interested at all in what he was having to offer, because it did sort of seem like he was just on a manuscript finding mission. And the more evidence that comes out about that, the more clear that seems to be the case. I mean, I have a letter written by Regardi himself that says the reason I lost all my stuff and had this, I think it was a burning of his house or something, he says in his own handwriting, in his own right words, that he believes it happened because he stole the Golden Dawn material and published it. Like he basically says that himself. Now, we're lucky he did. Of course, a lot of us wouldn't have gotten into this path if it wasn't for him. So, no shade on Regardi. He was a young man doing what he thought was right. And in his own words, he paid the price for it. So maybe that's all that needs to be said, like he came full circle in his own life. And I'm really grateful for what he did, because we have this wonderful magical ecosystem. We have the Ciceros. I just got the Cicero's new book the other day. Very excited. There's already some very big aha moments from some of their observations from their decades of practice. It doesn't matter that every single tradition necessarily comes about in the same way, right? There's always going to be, especially in the occult iconoclast movements and breakaways that might start out in a complicated manner. The order I come out of has plenty of controversies. All groups in the spiritual and human world that I've experienced have lots of issues. I mean, I went to worked for the Anglican Church for a while, and hoping that things would be saner there than in the occult world. I was wrong.
Okay.
So I was wanting to bring up, when you go back into the histories, as far as, you hear these tales of Edward Kelly, like hauling trunks out of, countries he'd been exiled from, and his nose was shaved off and his ears were shaved off. And in one Tycho Brahe book I was reading, they talked in the court of Rudolph. They talked about the fact that Tycho Brahe would constantly give Edward Kelly shit about his nose being chopped off, because Tycho Brahe had his nose chopped off as well and wore an artificial nose to cover it up. But what I was kind of getting at is, as these two merge and come together, you get into this stone, this mirror stone that Dee had. That was, what was it, an Aztec or Mayan stone that he wore on his foot, that Queen Elizabeth ended up sending to the court of Rudolph, and he kind of followed it. But you had said earlier, something about scrying. How much does scrying tie into this, as far as Dee with the black mirror and the scrying aspects of the Enochian philosophy?
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought all of that up. So definitely Kelly had his nose. He had his ears. There's no evidence otherwise. If Tycho Brahe lost his nose, that's news to me. But I guess he didn't want to be the only noseless guy, so he started pretending Kelly had as well. There'd be evidence, if there'd be actual evidence for that, if that were the case. And a lot of those, when I just went on the Edward Kelly tour in Prague, the very commercial one, they actually know a lot about Kelly in Prague, because they have all these records in Latin and Czech that we just don't have, all these centuries of research. Often, a lot of the time, it was attacks on Kelly, but you can still find out a lot of truth from an attack on someone, right? Because if someone's going to attack someone and they have bad info, like damaging info about you, you'd think they would release that info. They wouldn't hide it. So if all these people wanted to discredit Kelly and he had no, they probably would have said so, but they don't. Yeah, but that's just one thing. The other thing you brought up, which is even more interesting, because Kelly's reputation, both Dee and Kelly, like, they had to be attacked. They had to be discredited for years. I mean, Casaubon published Dee's Enochian material to discredit him, to make him look like an Anabaptist who was just believing whatever came into his own head. And as a result, kicked off a revolution in Enochian magic. I mean, Rudd, Cotton, all those guys used that published book to then practice, just like the publication of Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft was meant to condemn witchcraft, and this is how it's bad, and this is how it's witchcraft, and this is how it works. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, don't do it, but here's how you would. Right, that's where you get the origin of tracing pentagrams in the air, the Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft. So yeah, that Golden Dawn practice goes back a long way. As far as the black scrying mirror goes, yeah, that had nothing to do with Dee. That just got mixed up by the British Library and accidentally put in in this display with his stuff, but he never did any scrying with the black mirror. And he never owned that mirror. Neither did Kelly. They probably never even saw it. Maybe they did, but my understanding is it was put in that display by accident. Also, the scrying crystal that's in that display at the British Library, I heard the real one got taken by rich British aristocrats for into their private collections years ago and just got replaced with a fake. I hear that's the case with a lot of stuff at the British Library, and if it's not true, well, it's hard to prove, unfortunately. So we'll never really know. But the reason they practice scrying and they use scrying as their main method of magic is because they were highly influenced by Trithemius. And there's this pseudonymous Trithemian method of drawing spirits into crystals that we have the manuscripts for, and that a lot of us still base our scrying practices upon. So it's a old technique that has been around for a long time. I use a crystal ball, but mainly I work with a copper bowl that I hand hammered out back in the mid 90s in workshop class, and put water in that, puts oils for sympathy to the forces I'm working with, and then sometimes I'll put a crystal ball in there as well. And it's not for staring at, it's not for looking at or focusing on, it's for creating a reservoir of energy. So what does Barden call it? The fluid condenser with the metal and the crystal for the spirit to sort of anchor to, so that I can have longer and clearer conversations with it. I even use that when I'm doing divination or tarot readings for people. If I'm doing tarot readings for a lot of people, I might just create that little mini altar so that the spirits who are helping me with the interpretations and information have a nice little home to be in while we work. Maintain the contact longer. I've gotten great results from Enochian Magick doing it in simplified forms. Again, Scott Stenwick has a lot of good books on that I've used a lot, and you can get great results with even just printing out the sigil from a computer printer, standing on it and doing the ritual. You can have full on successful effects doing that. But I've found it's very hard to have prolonged scrying sessions doing things that way. But when I'm sitting in a temple space, I have the full table set up, done all the preparations, that's when it's easy for me to have long drawn out communications of tremendously insightful, often prophetic information go on for hours and hours and hours. Thank you. I love you too, Magus in the media.
It's cool, dude.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting point. So the experience around doing Enochian Magick hinges on a sort of a state of gnosis, would you say?
Well, I mean, state of gnosis, when I hear state of gnosis, I hear a state of knowledge. Special knowledge, maybe. What do you mean by gnosis?
Well, the Greeks would sort of refer to kind of like this altered state of perception, being able to channel, having that ability in sort of a different frame of consciousness. And they would call that sort of like a Gnostic state. So it has something to do with the process of doing Enochian Magick.
Yeah. Well, do you want me to give you a theoretical and historical or traditional answer, or an answer from personal experience?
Let me have them. I don't know.
Weave them together.
Buckle up. So there's a couple. So traditionally, there's a scryer, and then there's the conjurer. So D would be the conjurer. He would do some scrying himself sometimes, but mainly Kelly would be the scryer. So it's assumed Kelly went into some sort of altered state to do this scrying. Whether P.D. Newman's theory is correct that they were burning, suffusing the space with DMT. Let's put that to the side for this discussion, because the evidence is extremely strong, but generally dismissed by most people for obvious reasons. Because they're boring. People are boring. They don't want to even consider the possibility. It's so frustrating. But the evidence sort of speaks for itself. I mean, if Melusina and Cagliostro were using DMT in their Masonic ceremonies for a fact and calling it the Philosopher's Stone, then there's a good chance that what Kelly called the Philosopher's Stone was the same thing. Yeah, but again, there's a book on that you can read by P.D. Newman, Angels in Vermilion. So let's put aside the possibility that they were suffumigating their room with DMT. And there's lots of good reasons to debate that, because they would do their scrying of these spirits up in the study, in their ritual room during the day, like not at night. They were doing this during the day, which lines up with the whole sunshine possible prescription. And, you know, because in their diary entries, they're getting interrupted by their kids. They're getting interrupted by their wives, by noblemen showing up at Mortlake, you know, and calling them down, and they have to interrupt their session and run on down. So hard to go into much of a altered state of consciousness if you're constantly having to go see to things in the household, or, you know, that sort of daily obligation aspect of it. Again, they did this so much and over so many years, they probably did it in a wide variety of ways. They probably did it in more ways than we could even realize. And they may have hidden some of their main methods if they were, in fact, you know, burning certain substances. And there's suspiciously no mention in any of the Enochian diaries, of Dee's diaries, of any suffumigation or any preparations, which is why my discovery of the preparations for EnochiaCon 2024 was such a big deal. And it's also why P.D. Newman's work on what the suffumigations might have been. Why would they burning incense or preparing themselves with fasting unless it was maybe because they were hiding something secret? For a long time, we just assumed that they didn't burn incense. They didn't prepare themselves ritually. But that didn't really make sense, given Dee was so influenced by grimoires like the Heptameron, which have 6 months preparation. You know, you're giving alms every day. You're fasting, like, you know, Abramelin style preparation work. So if Dee was influenced by texts like that, by grimoires like the Heptameron, and even the Arbitel has some pretty, you know, some pretty clear preparations, working in the morning and that sort of thing, living a holy life, which Dee definitely considered to be crucially important, was to live as sacred a life as possible, as pious a life as possible. Both Dee and Kelly were, you got to remember, these were extremely pious men. Kelly got deep into Roman Catholicism when they were on the continent, and it's hard for modern minds, I think, to understand that kind of faith and piety. So that alone itself, you might say, is an altered state of consciousness or a state of gnosis. Personally, in modern practice and in my experience, if I'm being a scryer, do I go into an altered state to receive clear communications? You betcha. But I really like some of the advice given by previous occult experts like Adley Nichols, who has since moved on to focusing on other grimoires like the SSM and older medieval stuff. But when he did Enochian stuff, you know, he was telling me, like, I was asking him about the same question. How do you do it? I was like, how do you do it? He's like, well, he lets the monkey mind run free. He doesn't want to be in an altered state. He leaves the rooms on in the place, because if he sees phenomena, he wants to see them clearly. If the spirits are actually going to speak to him, he wants to know it's the spirit speaking to him and not just his own imagination. And I think that's not a horrible method to apply when doing some of this work. I think, yeah, it's helpful to put yourself into an altered state to receive these communications more clearly. But especially if you're someone who, you know, wants to be certain of the profundity and the veracity of what you're experiencing, then yeah, you can put a bit more onus on the spirit to actually demonstrate and speak louder, if you like, and be more clear in its communication if it's going to be received. So there is sort of a spectrum of approaches that you could take. And you know, any magician's going to say, well, don't just pick one, or don't just assume one's right and one's wrong. Try it all over many years and let us know.
Excellent.
Thank you. Jen, you got any questions, man?
Honestly, I am just sort of absorbing everything that is being said, but I guess my question for Frater RC would be, is there a way to sort of detechnologize? I know this is controversial maybe, but, like, is there a way to sort of bring the Enochian system into, like, a more chaos magic framework or a more, like, 2025, like, we're not going to we don't necessarily need all this magical ritual technology, but we can, like, sort of utilize elements, pieces here and there, maybe keywords, key pieces, key language components, and sort of it doesn't have to be like a reconstitution, but like just a sort of a more pragmatic or more accessible way for people.
Well, I think that that's sort of what I was trying to say earlier on was that's what we've been doing for the last 30 years. And it's only with in the it's like, one of the reasons I started in Enochiacon and did the Arcane Research Society back in 2019, and with a series of lectures over in Prague at Kelly's Tower, including doing Enochian work up at the turret, the parapet of the tower itself, and talking to the spirits there, doing Enochian magic. The reason I start all this is because what you're describing is, in my opinion, what's the only thing that's been going on in Enochian magic is the breaking apart of the system into tiny, tiny little pieces that can be then used in chaos magic and all of that sort of stuff. I mean, my friend Jason Louv, I'm honored to be able to call him that at this point in my life. That's pretty wild. He's done a tremendous study in his book.
Oh, we just lost him.
Dropped out. No.
He comes back.
Well, and what I find interesting in regard to that whole idea is that when they got in contact with these entities, the entities told them the methods by which they needed to be able to set up and communicate and the necessary, and this is what 100 years before we start to see the sigil magic with the lesser keys of Solomon. So
Is he back?
I think he's coming back on.
I put it back. All right, we're bringing it back on now. You're gonna have his stuff set up.
That's a good point, though, Robbie.
Yeah.
What you just said, like to bring it into the technological, because that's obviously what people have been trying to do, right? Is like to imprint the Enochian sort of framework onto like technology, like onto our phones and onto like to as a device interfaces. Because that's what I think. I don't know. I don't want to speak for Enochian Magick since I don't know anything about it. But I think that maybe that's a big part of it is like the interface with whatever it is. Like I think all of you know I don't totally believe in spirits, but I'm not negating them either.
Right.
I think it's easier than ever to actually access making this stuff, the furniture, right? Like the maker revolution, you can just 3D print a lot of stuff. You can print this stuff out, put it on the table. Like if you compare that to what Dee and Kelly were working with, they were making absolutely everything by hand. Just an incredible amount of labor going into each and every piece of furniture on this whole thing as they're doing these different channelings. So I imagine it was kind of exhausting.
Well, Dee definitely had craftsmen make a lot of the things for him. That's definitely the case. And there's a lot of great craftsmen today, and you can make the table. One of my students just found a perfectly sized table on American Amazon. It was like $200, painted it up in one evening, traditionally styled, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, even better than the one me and my friend made. But my friend, he made the table from scratch out of Canadian cedar. And that of course is a bit more work and takes a workshop to do that. But making the tools traditionally as a magician yourself is important. So doing as much as you can, if you can make something yourself, it's good to make it yourself. It will have more power for you. And the spirits are aware of what energy you put into things. They're aware of the investment you make. And if you don't believe in spirits, well, it's even more compelling, because let's put it this way, your own mind knows where you're cutting corners, right? Where you're putting in the effort. I mean, when we don't put in enough effort, we get kept up at night sometimes by our conscience when we don't even behave in a certain way? What weird creatures are we that based on how we behave in the world, we might not be able to sleep because we feel bad at how we behaved? What's that? You don't hear about that from many other species, I think, at least not, vocalized, because they can't vocalize. Not like we can. So we're weird creatures. We're weird beings. I mean, the Hermetica calls us, we're double gods. We're gods when we ascend and die and become like the star gods or angels, but we're also dying gods. That's what a beautiful phrase used in the Hermetica for human beings. We're dying gods who become star gods, or even better than star gods, because first we were dying gods. So we're 2 times gods. And it is a very optimistic view of human nature. But, if you have to pick an outlook in the world, it's not the worst thing to pick an optimistic one. So, investing time and energy into your tools, if you even just take a purely psychological approach to magic, which is probably not a horrible way to approach magic until you actually see indisputable evidence of a spirit, or what you might call a spirit, right? Like, it's hard to fault someone for not believing in little green men if they haven't seen one. You know what I mean? Like, whereas if once you see one, it's like, yeah, okay, now I have no choice. I have sort of got to believe in this because I've seen this thing. Spirits are something I believed in only because I experienced them and saw them at a young age. And once you do, you're sort of screwed. You got to spend the rest of your life finding out what the fuck these things are. And otherwise, or not. Sorry for swearing. I don't want to offend any of you. That's an insight.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some backstory to all this, but we won't go into it.
Yeah, that was funny though. Headless.
But let me finish, Jen. I think there's more to your question, if you don't mind me rambling on for another minute. Because I really do. I have a lot of sympathy for different points of view and different approaches to magic. Again, as someone who's been teaching since the 90s, I've seen people make a lot of great changes in their life, and find fulfillment in their life through different approaches to magic. So I'm, especially as someone who considers himself a traditionalist, as a matter of taste and preference, I'm too experienced to think that there is only one way, or that there are best ways. There is not necessarily even best practices, other than gets you closer to God, that which gives you greater access to higher consciousness. So, a great way for someone to start approaching Enochian magic in a piecemeal way that's still traditional, or still could lead to a traditional approach. Look at the letters, draw them out on white cards, start contemplating them, understand them, study them, meditate on them, see what they open up, what hyper pathways of consciousness they open up in your head. If you're into entheogens, stare at them and do some entheogens. Maybe you just want to, do a little weed, or, fill the room up with DMT if you want to get crazy, and see what that doorway opens up for you. I mean, that's a way of breaking it apart, technologically speaking, and applying it to different avenues. But let that application perhaps come from God, or that is to say, the letter or spirit itself. Scrying a symbol is generally in magic considered the best place to always start. Contemplate it, meditate on it, eventually try and communicate through it. And if all else fails, you turn it into a doorway and see where it takes you. And if none of that works for you, maybe it's not your path, right? Don't bang your head against a wall when something's not working for you. I tried to be a jogger for years. My ankles just wouldn't take it. So, weight was.
No, I really appreciate that. I think that was exactly that was the perfect sort of response to my question. And it was exactly what I was asking. I think letter mysticism is so important. That is something I'm doing right now with Hebrew Kabbalah. And it's a lot easier than it sounds, because it was very intimidating to me at first, because I have a little bit of Sanskrit. I speak Chinese, but like it not like the Hebrew is like totally foreign to me. So I agree that is, I mean, I don't know from a Enochian perspective, but letter magic should work for pretty much everyone. And like meditating on the conceptual, even just the logographic quality of it, I think is very powerful. And I love what you said about it just opening a cognitive gateway, because I think that's what the logos at its core is about. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And you might really like Darlene's book, Ophanic Revelations. It's an Enochian book with a very colorful title, cover. That you can get, I think you can get it on Amazon. And Dr. Burns was involved in that. It's from her community of practitioners. And Darlene, who is the partner of Vincent Bridges, I hope I'm not getting that wrong, she does an analysis of the letters in that, charting them like a font on a graph, and shows different understanding them, which is basing them on what's it called? Damn. Oh, Dr. Burns is going to kill me if I forget the word. So the letters, instead of being flat, are looked at as cones, like little wormholes going different directions and turning different ways. So check out Ophanic Revelation for more on that. I did a very mediocre job at explaining it just now, but if you get where I'm going with that, then you'll see. So there's looking at the letters as cones or as tunnels. To me, it was shocking to see that in a delightful way, because the one of the first experiences I had on working with Aethers was, well, I always tend to be when I do scrying or even traveling in the spirit vision, I don't usually go through tunnels. I usually enter into what I would describe as vistas, or like large dark spaces, in which, the thing I call might show up in some form or another. And after testing it, I want to interact with it to then expand the horizon. And in Tatwa work in the Golden Dawn, we do this by entering the Tatwa first, and then we vibrate the Hebrew names, and then we vibrate Enochian names, right? So to create parameters in the landscape that is invoked and evoked. But with Enochian Aethers, I have tended to go down these tunnels, these tubes, like you see in graphics, like in a movie or in the intro to my podcast. I tried to make it look like that, because that is the experience of the Enochian Aethers. So when I saw the letters done as vortexes and cones, I was very surprised, because I was like, yes, that is what I experienced, having never thought of this ever before. And the letters themselves are, to me, they're less impressive than I would expect from an angelic language, because they're so Phoenician in their style. A lot of them look like English. But obviously, again, spirits communicate to us in ways that we can understand. Otherwise, we don't understand them, and we don't know what they're saying, and there's no notes to be made in our diary. But they do communicate things in a way that we can grasp onto, and these symbols are clearly ones that were familiar to Dean Kelly in a variety of ways. You got the letter Omega, you've got like an H that's backwards, you've got all kinds of things. And if you look at some of the other magical languages they were familiar with, they're extremely similar to one in particular. So clearly the angels, they give us, they engage with our fantasia through the familiar concepts that we already have in our head. And that's the map we have for that terrain. But the terrain is always, people like to think, like one friend asked me, so he said, so is magic is the map and the Enochian system is the terrain? I'm like, no, the whole idea behind this concept of map and terrain or territory is always that the terrain is unknowable. It's always ultimately unknowable, right? I mean, it wasn't just St. Paul that said that. It's our own scientists in modern times who are like, look, we're never going to get all of reality. As one black matter or dark matter physicist said to me, sitting in Granny Rainbow's trailer, because it's her daughter, she just held her hand. She's like, less than 5%. That's all you'll ever experience of reality at the most. It's like, okay, yeah. So we all know we're in this boat together, and we think this boat is the universe. But it turns out we are maybe all just on the head of a pin.
Right.
Yeah, pretty cool letters though. I still, and when, as soon as you think of those wide endings and those narrow points as like entrances and exits, I mean, oh baby, now we're talking. Like, I don't know
Well,
where
when
we're
you
gonna
bring
go
up
with this, but we're just
when you
starting.
bring up perspective, all of these things could be seen from multiple perspectives. Like you might be looking at an object on its side or on its
from
on the
above.
front or something, right? So all of these things
Yeah,
do have an added layer of context that's not fully realized.
so you got to listen to Dr. Burns's 50-hour YouTube course on the Monas Hieroglyphica. You just got to do it. It's an initiation on its own, and I promise you, you might even go up a standard deviation if you work hard at understanding what she's talking about. Because Dee was a genius. He was the genius, possibly the greatest mind of his era,
Right.
or of many eras. There's no two ways about that. The guys who built Stonehenge were all probably super geniuses. They just didn't have the same tools that we have today, right? So we had these great minds, and he got to the edge of human knowledge and said, well, what's left? I can't find any more books that I don't have. I guess I'll start talking to angels and spirits and see if they can point me in a direction that will further my knowledge and bring me closer to God, which is, it's a noble task. And he took it very seriously. And in his Monas Hieroglyphica, which is his true masterpiece, and which the Enochian system is much more intimately involved in than I ever thought until Dr. Burns's fabulous work. Everything is thought of in terms of sacred geometry, in terms of, the Enochian table is not a cube of white. It's actually a hypercube or a tesseract.
Right.
And Dr. Burns, she takes you through all that in a way that I could never do that. Yeah, these symbols, like the whole Golden Dawn grade structure is based on this schema, according to her analysis. And the Golden Dawn members certainly knew this text very well. Westcott and Mathers were definitely familiar with this text, as were the authors of the Rosicrucian manifestos. This symbol was put on the very front cover of the Chemical Wedding, if I recall correctly.
Right.
So Dee's system and Enochian is the underlying. I mean, it's so amazing. Like, it might have actually gotten forgotten about if Casaubon hadn't tried to disparage Dee's reputation and make him look like a fool by publishing The True and Faithful Relation. So it's pretty funny how the spirits managed to get their work into the public's attention by any means necessary, including the mockery of Dee and Kelly.
Once you start reading it, it's very infectious. Like once you start reading their accounts and going through all of these different things, it's like, I got to know what's going to happen next. Like all of this stuff is building on itself. And you're like, this is really riveting. A lot of that stuff was kind of exciting,
I mean, it's a rollicking good time, their whole life story and adventure, especially once you get past the surface information that tries to reduce it all to just, like, oh, they swapped wives one night. It's like, no, they didn't. What are you talking about? They didn't swap wives one night. They swapped wives lots of nights, right? Do you know how to look at Dee's diary and see what little tiny marking he put to indicate the nights he got laid? No, you don't. But once you do, the story opens up and expands even more. And when you find out about the wife swapping as well, as much as maybe Dee's wife was not pleased with it, how faithful they were to these spirits to do what they were told to do. Even Dee didn't want to go chew out Rudolph, the Holy Roman Emperor, upon first meeting him, but he did, because the spirits said so. The wife maybe didn't want to sleep with Kelly, but she did because they said so. And even Dr. Sludge has brought up, like, we don't know the full story there because there's this thing they were part of possibly called the Family of Love. Now, if that sounds like a Elizabethan hippie polyamory kind of movement, then you'd probably be right. So who knows what they actually lived their lives like, right? They wouldn't have put all of that in writing because, you wouldn't want to get judged too harshly by the, religion was a bit more in charge in those days. So you might have kept those matters more close to the vest. So again, the more you go past the surface story of these guys' lives and their families' lives, and the remarkable work even their kids did. I mean, they produced some remarkable children. Arthur D, the daughter, who's a poet, and Kelly, didn't die in prison. He went back with his family, died a few years later with his family, living in Czech, in Bavaria. And
Well,
yeah,
I
so
don't think it would be an exaggeration to say that John Dee's mathematics created the British Empire. Like his ideas of how to chart these oceans gave them an advantage over everybody else. I mean, that was huge.
yeah. Well, he tried to give them advice. They tended to not pay attention to his lessons on how to navigate with the maps. There's these great instances of they're like, yeah, he told us what to do, but we're just going to go this direction. And next thing you know, they're like fighting Eskimos and barely coming back alive. But in the Monas Hieroglyphica itself, there's this one part that I love, where Dee says, "And forgive me, your highness or your majesty, for revealing what might be a great secret in this diagram, but it must be said for the sake of the integrity of this theory." And what he's actually revealing, there's hours of lecture Dr. Burns does on parabolas and ellipses. I never thought I would spend so many hours in my life studying those since high school, but I did. And what he's actually showing in this diagram at this one part is he's showing the difference between I think it's the parabola that would be used, that people use, that doesn't hit another ship with a cannonball, and he shows how to correct it so that you can use the correct trajectory to accurately predict how a cannonball will hit a ship.
Nice.
One thing, one thing I wanted to follow up with, Frater RC, is that what you said about their kind of unconventional lifestyle. Now, my question is not directly about that. Like, I don't really care personally. Doesn't affect me at all. Like, however they arrange themselves, like, whatever.
Yeah.
Magicians are weird people. It is what it is. But do you think that sometimes those like elements are included in certain stories about not just them, but about like all magicians in a way to sort of as fetters or blinds, or even just like misdirections as ways to take people sort of like outside of the context in which they were, outside of the actual work that they were doing? Like it's like a distraction almost.
I mean, yeah, I think that, obviously, if you're trying to discredit someone, you'll say whatever true and untrue thing necessary. And Dee's an easy target because he was a Catholic priest, and then during his lifetime, he went from being the son of a wealthy, successful man, being in jail with his dad and older brother executed, and him being about to be executed himself, right? There's this great scene. He's in jail with this other guy who's a Copernican, also on the, going to be on the chopping block. He goes in to get tested or questioned by the Bloody Baron, so-called for obvious reasons. And next thing you know, the Copernican gets called in, and the Bloody Baron calls Dee out, now dressed as a priest again, to question the Copernican and interrogate him. So Dee must have given quite the speech to this bishop, the Bloody Bishop, to convince him to not only not execute him, but to bring him on as one of his fellow inquisitors. So Dee saved his own neck just barely there. And then, of course, used his position of power to actually be a bit more helpful than to the other people who were on the up for inquisition, shall we say. But yeah, because of that ignominy in Dee's life, he never was going to receive any official status at court, and never received any official position from the Queen. He struggled his whole life, having to beg, borrow, and almost steal, perhaps, to just survive and to fund his endeavors. And he did such great work. People didn't mind supporting him. Like, this is the kind of guy who, by modern standards, could ask his rich noble friends for a couple $100,000 to buy some cool new books, so he could teach them how to not crash their ships, or how to fire a cannonball better. So this is a useful guy, right? If I told you I could like 10x your business in 3 weeks, just give me $2 million, you'd be like, yeah, will I get a refund if I fail? Cool. All right. I'll back you up, right? D was that kind of guy, it seems. I'll go
He's a
treasure hunting
spy
for you.
right?
He was a spy for the Queen. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
You had
it's
to be a
unfortunate
jack-
the 007 thing wasn't true, but he definitely was a spy. And Dr. Burns thinks Shakespeare was working with him.
Right.
Was Garland, was known as Garland when he was in Prague, and that whole side of the story is completely fascinating, and it's a whole other element, right? It's just a whole other side. That's the whole spying of it. The Apocalypsis Historia YouTube channel, it's up and coming channel on YouTube that's really going all in, doing 4 or 5 hour live streams, diving into Shakespeare and Sydney and all of these other characters from that time period. They'd be some fun guys to have on if you want to go into the Shakespeare stuff.
Mm.
Oh man, we've gotten so deep on the Virginia side of the Shakespeare sort of conspiracy. I mean, there's a whole other element that's going on over here having to do with Rockefeller of all people. So Rockefeller and Manly P. Hall. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Damn. We don't live in boring times.
No,
No.
no, not at all. No. Was there anything else anybody wanted to ask?
Well, I was gonna say, if I remember right, towards the end when he finally went back to his estate, hadn't it been looted and a bunch of the books been burned, and kind of the people had turned against him?
Yeah, his own family members looted his library and sold him off for profit.
Right,
This
right.
guy got betrayed by everybody. Almost.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Queen could have helped him out more and given him some money or a place and just strung him along. And he went up to Manchester and all his family died of illness, and then he died. And
Right.
very. But of course, life was rougher back then, and illness did happen, and poverty was a harsh reality of existence for sure. Especially if you're following what you would see as your true will versus your own self-interest.
Very true.
I had two
Sad-
quick
sad ending.
follow-ups, if it's okay. Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
My apologies.
Fire away.
Oh, I wanted to ask about the money situation. So this has come up before when we've discussed certain medieval magicians, is like their poverty, and I'm not saying that they was like totally just like desolation poverty. Obviously, this is like it's like big money and big losses both at the same time. So I think, is there a way to sort of use Enochian? I'm not saying use it for material purposes, but is there a pragmatic way maybe to use Enochian magic for wealth drawing or Jupiterian works, etc., etc.? So that's question A, and then question B, or perhaps is observation. But I like that you described the sort of the spaces that you see during letter mysticism as vistas, because this is something that we just talked about, is like the spaces where we arise in consciousness. Like some people would posit, like Kenneth Grant would say, we live in the tunnels of Set. So those are like big cavernous empty spaces, right? So it is similar. There are similar kinds of ideas of like, where does the word fundamentally arise? Well, fundamentally it arises in your own mind, but there are different ways to get there. So I don't know if that was a question, but you're welcome to respond to either one as you will.
Yeah, you might need to rephrase the second one after I answer the first. So the first, when I did Enochian aether work with Lon Milo Duquette when he was in town, it was just out of college, and brother Mason Troy put that on. Thank you, Troy, for all the events you put on over the years. And getting to work with Lon was a fun experience, because he had no qualms about just giving everyone the tools they needed to do Enochian magic in a room full of strangers with each other and make it work. And so I thought I would do something I had actually never done before, and I used that opportunity for my own goal to be money magic, because I figured that was something that was extremely verifiable, right? So, and I did have a valid need, because I was sleeping on my publisher's sofa at the time and definitely needed to get my own place. And, yeah, so I needed a little help there. And so I did magic for an exact amount of money. The next day woke up and it was in my account from a source that in a million years, I would never have expected it to come from. Though I had put out the word in general that, yeah, like I'd gone through, I'd been doxxed, I'd had my home invaded, had to leave that home, slept on my publisher's sofa for a few months, and then got a place. And so the very next day, that money was there. And so that was an Enochian money magic, just done by scrying the aether or traveling in the aether of texts. And what I did there, of course, was an operation for money in the kingdom of the gnomes. And, that was just my own inner map work and spirit work for making that happen. But that was the context. So there's a simple way that I did it the first time. And since that was the first time in my life I had ever even done magic for money, since I've always been sort of a working class kid, paper route since I was 10 years old. People don't do that anymore, but that's how I made my money, is doing little odd jobs and stuff as a kid. And it never was a magical thing for me. But I'm definitely I've warmed up to the understanding these days that people have that magic should help your material life first, so that you can then pursue the spiritual life. I think there's validity to that point of view that people have. For a long time, I sort of resisted any kind of sympathy towards that perspective, but now given this chaos of the world and given the rampant inequality we're facing, I think, yeah, all bets are off. Fuck it. Do what you got to do to survive. And if God and the spirits of nature can't help you survive, then what are we even doing here? So there's a simple version. With doing the Enochian heptarchia work, which is what I teach in my course, my intro course, I would work with the spirit of Mercury. Like, I would recommend anyone to work with the spirit of Mercury to get money, as opposed to just general abundance. If someone wants to do money magic, set up an altar to Mercury, get an orange altar cloth, get some blue candles, and pray at it 3 times a day to Mercury spirits, 3 times a day at least. And, that'll help. It's helped everyone I've ever told that to do who's done it and sent me photos of the beautiful altars they made, have found major benefits in doing that. Now, if you want to talk about hardcore magic for hardcore financial success, it always seemed like that would be theoretically possible, but no one really had the cojones to try to see how until now. And the great Scott Michael Stenwick, when he was on my podcast recently, told me what his workshop would be at our EnochiaCon this year, because now we're in 2026. Crazy to think. But it is using the cacodemons, which most of us never work with. You're generally not meant to work with them. Most of them are there to cause illness and disease, because they are just simply the spirits that are those things. But he's looking at the cacodemons of gems and precious metals, and has discovered a way to use them and do magic in the Enochian system to achieve not just financial success, but wild degrees of wealth. And he's speaking from experience, shall we say. So I don't know what are. There's room for 20 people to do that workshop at our conference in Austin, Texas, November 6th through 8th. Go sign up at arcaneresearchsociety.com/2026, and you'll find out.
Thank you so much. That was a great answer. I totally agree with you. And shout out Kelby Losak, because Kelby came on my show and he was like, this is how I do my money magic. And he laid it all out, and he basically does exactly what you said. Now he uses a Pikachu idol as his kind of mercurial symbol, which I love, because there's a Mercury Jupiter connection with lightning. So it kind of works in both spheres, if you want to call it that. But I love that you described something so similar that a chaos magician who's like my age does and works for him. So it's there is something that is understandable and sort of transitive. You could say a transitive property between the two systems, and more, I don't want to call it modern magic, but it's kind of what we're doing now. And I also think that everything that you said, like I think that we should utilize the systems. Like I'm like you. I'm like, magic shouldn't be totally material, and it shouldn't be, but it shouldn't be totally spiritual either. There has to be something like pragmatic and like reasonable about it, where you're actually improving your material conditions. But maybe that's not your primary goal. Maybe your primary goal is much higher than that, but you still need the foundation to sort of get there. So I really appreciate that you said that. Thank you.
Also, we keep dancing around this color issue. So there's this change in color that is with the Golden Dawn sense, but I think it's really interesting once you get into the flashing idea and how you can achieve a sort of trance-like state looking at the different flashing colors, these two contrasting colors that create a different tone in between the two.
Yeah, I mean, in our retina, my tie is orange and my shirt is blue. Right, these colors reverse in our eyes, and it is quite a psychedelic little aspect of the GD system that plays with colors in this way. But also, the GD sees colors not as they see them as the forces themselves. So by wearing a color, you're not wearing something that represents a force. You're wearing that force itself. The color is the force. Yeah, there was another aspect of what you said that I wanted to respond to. Damn, what was it? You distract me with those color references. Colors always, as a Waldorf school grad.
I was going to ask you real quick. Actually, that's funny that you brought up the colors. I was going to ask you if you purposely wore those because it's Wednesday, right? And I figured that would be.
Oh, no, just total coincidence. Total coincidence.
Because I would be like Mercury.
Yeah, no.
Jupiter would be blue.
No, I just needed something to like make streaming and podcasting a little bit more ritualistic and fun for myself. So I thought, what if I get a planetary shirt for each day and then wear them on the appropriate days with the tie? The only ones I don't have is I don't have a green shirt and a red tie because on Fridays I never really do any streaming stuff. I mean,
gotcha.
Yeah, no, that's not a day for streaming. Usually it's a day for other things. What do I do? I usually read. Here's what I was going to say before about the life abundant. Basically, in the Hermetica, in Hermetic spirituality, the primary gesture to the world or to creation is one of thanksgiving, right? But you don't give thanks. It's very human. When do we give thanks? We give thanks at the end of the harvest. Well, in Canada, we do. I don't know what you crazy Yanks celebrate. Something about slaughtering First Nations or something like that. I don't know. Crazy Americans. But no, I'm joking. We give thanks because of the harvest. And you give thanks because, the pilgrims were fed by the First Nations and you gave them blankets to keep them warm. And everything's been grand ever since. Saint Irenaeus, who said some nice things and some not so nice things, says that the glory of God is every creature fully alive. And I think if you look at the Hermetic approach to the mysteries as one of thanksgiving, and you keep in mind these Christian saints who were clearly believers that God wanted the best for us and wanted us to appreciate the fullness of creation, that God sacrificed God's self to create and sustain in a constant act of creation. And what's funny about this language, of course, is it actually tracks really well on modern scientific understandings of the universe and the constantly expanding cosmos that, fades and consumes itself so that it continues to perpetuate itself, right? It dies so it can be reborn in a sense. So there's this initiation of the soul that happens through wondering and being open to the realities beyond the physical, but at the same time, our only fundamental response to creation is to give thanks for it and for being alive in the Hermetic texts and spirituality, that is. And so I think that we've seen this carried forward in the mystery traditions of the West in a really beautiful and clear way that it wasn't brought forward in Western religion. It's encapsulated a bit better, I think, in Judaism than Christianity, because obviously Christianity got highly distorted by power structures that, became very abusive and focused more on death than life and rebirth. So there you go. So yeah, do magic to make your life better, and then give thanks for the life that you have, and initiate yourself through wondering what is beyond. That's how Hermetic spirituality works, is initiation through simple contemplation of that which is beyond the physical. That's all you need. Well, and a guide helps.
I have a quick follow-up for that. That was great. That was a great bar. But okay, is Austin magic? Because a lot of people, a lot of institutional magicians have their setup in Austin. So I need to know what is the magic of Austin specifically? Why is the Temple of Set based in Austin? Why are there so many?
Oh, is it?
Even Victoria is very magical too, but we don't have to get into that. But no, but
You mean
Austin
Victoria,
specifically.
BC?
Yeah, Victoria, BC. Well, like the oldest
Are you
Golden
in-
Dawn Lodge is there, right? So, you know, oh yeah, Jamie. Do you know Jamie Paul Lamb?
Okay, are you in Victoria, BC?
No, I live in Canada though. I was born in Vancouver.
Okay. Oh, cool. A fellow Vancouverite. Very nice. The Golden Dawn Lodge in Victoria is not very old. Right. It started after I
Okay.
closed the one in
Yeah,
Vancouver.
my apologies. I must have
it
misunderstood
started up
something. Okay.
after I closed ours. The one in Vancouver started in the early 90s. The one in Victoria started the same year I closed down the one in Vancouver. Yeah, that's well, and there is another Golden Dawn thing in BC, but it's not public, and therefore, yeah. Anyway, it's been around since the 70s though. But yeah, we can't talk about that one. Austin, I don't know. I've never been there, but my friends like Jeff Contreras and other friends I met down in LA in the mid 90s, they have been telling me to come there for ages. Massive Golden Dawn presence, massive Martinist presence, so many different magical presences. Jason Louv is based there now. I got cut off earlier talking about him and his pioneering of chaos magic that he's done through, and with the Enochian system in particular. You want chaos magic and Enochian. Jason Louv's down in Austin. He'll be the featured presenter at our workshop there this spring. We'll be getting a lot into the chaos magic, Enochian magic intersection this year in Austin. I don't know if it's a magical place or if it's on a ley line or whatever, but it's a powerful spot from everything I've seen. And after I go there this spring, I will let you know if I find it personally to be a place of power. But, they say it's a weird city, and weird cities tend to be weird for a reason.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Jamie Paul Lamb, what's your point about him though? I didn't want to interrupt that.
No, I just he explained that he goes to get his grades in Victoria. Like that's the lodge that he goes to. He said it on air, so it's not like something.
Yeah. Well, he's friends with my buddy Frater RC there. My old friend there. I met him in 2005, just after he started up his temple there. So yeah, Jamie Paul Lamb is part of that group. The Hermetic Society of the Golden Dawn is what they're called. Their chief adepts are Frater RC and Darcy Kuntz and Christine Zaleski. And there's some other prominent people involved with it, though I'm not sure if they're public about that, so I won't say it. But yeah, we go back a long ways. I'm glad they're doing what they're doing, because Victoria deserves to have Golden Dawn initiations available to people. So it's great that Jamie is still involved with those cool kids over there.
Are you familiar with Frater RC and his kind of work in Vancouver on the Aeon of the Daughter working?
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Like I was doing so during college, I was at Cap College for a year, and I'd have these 3-hour breaks, and I'd go across the street to the graveyard and do my rosary and invoke Thoth and do communion work with spirits there in the graveyards. And I didn't realize that right there was Frater RC's grave, right, like feet away from this place where I was doing my work. And I had no idea that he was there. It was just a powerful place for me to do magic. during those long university breaks you have sometimes between day classes and night classes, right? You can end a class at 4 and no point going home, even though you don't have to be back till 8. So you just stick around and hang out and do hours of ritual work and study your books. And yeah, it was right there, right at a Frater RC's grave, right there in the old graveyard of North Vancouver, where I grew up. And yeah, didn't know much about him. Finally was given some of his books, and they were very odd and confusing to me because I'm not too familiar with what he did, and I'm not familiar also with the AA and the thelemic system of Crowley from which he came. So not only do I not understand his unique contributions, I don't have an understanding very much of the baseline which he's coming from, because those systems are so, similar but still speciated from the GD system. So they don't really make a lot of sense to me. But he's a very interesting guy, and I'm very proud to have grown up in his hood.
Van City for life.
North Shore, baby. Yeah. Shout out to the North Vancouver Waldorf School. All my anthroposophical homies.
Nice. Unless anybody else has got another question, we could probably wrap it up now. You guys are good. All right. Was there anything else
This has been
that you would like to add before we wrap it up?
Add about what?
Enochian Magick, if there's anything you want to.
Oh God, I mean, we could talk about it for forever. There's so much exciting stuff going on in it these days. I mean, definitely, I recommend everyone check out Dr. Terry Burns's copy of Dees Monis Hieroglyphica, the only good version ever made, and her 50-hour YouTube course. Go to Dr. Terry Burns on YouTube and see her course. Start at the beginning. You don't need the book to go through her course. I got the book after I went through the course, and it's the kind of information that'll really force your brain to stretch and think in some new and exciting ways, as well as the whole historical aspect to it and the alchemical and magical side. And she even addresses those points when they come up in ways that most academics would be afraid to, but she wasn't afraid to do it because she's already a retired professor emeritus and has made it very clear she no longer cares what people think and is just going to be true to herself. And God bless her for that, because that is what we need from serious scholars, in my opinion, not people who are gatekeeping knowledge, deleting comments, or refusing to engage in debates with others because it might threaten their position. We don't need that shit anymore. There you go. Yeah, she's great. You'll love her. She's got a powerful mind, big brain, and it was a pleasure to get to kickstart these Enochian conferences with her support and collaboration and contribution. When we do after 2026, we'll do 2027 in Prague, and we'll do a whole week of it. So we'll do a 3-day retreat going around Prague and doing that work in all the magical places with her, and then we'll do a 3-4 day conference there with all the European Enochian personalities invited to present and attend. So yeah, it's gonna be big this year in Austin. We got a whole building downtown. We got multiple rooms, lecture hall, banquet hall. It's gonna be fabulous. And right now, early enrollment is open. There's like only limited early enrollment slots left. So if you want to get in at the best price, go check it out right now. And you get access to not only EnochiaCon, but you also get access to the spring workshop, which won't be on Enochian Magick particularly. It'll be whatever Jason Louvre wants to present on, plus of whatever the other presenters present on. I'll be there, and I will do a little Enochian component as well. But yeah, lots happening this year, and we're excited to do it in the States before we take it over to Europe in 2027.
Awesome. All right, dude. Nice.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. I would definitely probably like to get you on again. Maybe like something a little bit more specific or some other stuff to even do with Golden Dawn Magic.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I love talking about all this stuff.
Yeah, this was great. Yeah, and yeah, for real. Yeah, I don't know, like kind of like Jin too. I really don't know much about Enochian Magick, really. So, and I haven't been able to cover it. So I thought this was really amazing. So really appreciate it.
We didn't even
Well,
talk about Enochian chess.
Oh, I know. Well, you could watch my interview with Christine Zaleski about that. I've only played it once. I want to get into it some more. But Nick, I'll send you a free code to access my course. You can do my course, and then we can get deeper into it once you've done that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Give it a try.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Before we wrap it up, let me let everybody plug their shows again. Headless Giant, please, sir. Let everybody know where they can find all your shows.
How you doing? You can find me at the Headless Giant on YouTube, on Twitter, and tomorrow we got a another Headless Giant mailbag coming up. So definitely shoot me those emails at the Headless Giant Podcast at gmail.com if you've got an esoteric or occult or strange story, even dreams. Send me those, and then you'll get some stickers in the mail. So send those to me, and we'll see you there tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. And Jin the Ninja.
Well, thank you guys so much. It was another awesome roundtable. Obviously, we packed them in tonight.
Thank
If you want to, if you want to check me out at Threshold Saints on IG and X Twitter, those are the show accounts, and then also at www.thresholdsaints.substack.com. That's one of the portals, and then for the Grey Lodge is the True Grey Lodge with a V, so TRVE plus Ultra Baby, greylodge.com. You can hear all our speculative aeonic work, hundreds of hours, and also check out all the shows with the other brothers, the other freighters of the Grey Lodge on my show. So thank you so much, Nick. Obviously, a huge honor. Thank you, Frater RC. Appreciate it greatly. Obviously, it's great to hear another West Coaster on the show, especially from our side of the West Coast. And Robbie and Headless, thank you guys so much. It's great.
No Vancouver in the house, eh?
That's right.
That's the nickname. That's a nickname that you wouldn't know. They nickname our city No Vancouver. Heartless bastards. Those Laurentian elites. No,
I've had some good times in Vancouver.
I know. Oh, there's lots of. I mean, dude, you can buy DMT and cocaine over the counter.
Yeah,
and get a receipt for tax write-offs.
What? Oh, okay. Party time.
Yeah, it's not a good thing because we didn't create any treatment centers. We're like, we'll do it just like Portugal, but without the treatment centers and the rehab. That'll work.
Robbie Marks, please let everybody know where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, I am R Marks or Robbie Marks. I'm an artist, illustrator, researcher, author. If you want to check out my various works, you can connect with me at my Linktree, which is Linktree RMARX, and that has my podcast, social media, everything. And yeah, it's always great to come on with Headless and Jin. This is back to the old school, and Frater, it's great to meet you. And Nick, thanks for having me on. As always, get me out of my hole, my little hermit hole up here in the Great North Woods. So,
I'm glad you made it. It's great stuff, man. It's great stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
And Frater RC, please let everybody know where they can find all your stuff.
Yeah, I'm on my podcast is on all podcast platforms. Go give a nice review of me on Apple Podcasts and Spotify if you don't mind, because not everyone's very nice there. Yeah, that would help me out a lot. Otherwise, go to hermeticpodcast.com. You can become a free member of my Cyber Guild. Show up to some seasonal Zooms. Support me on YouTube. Become a member. But mainly, you should go to the arcaneresearchsociety.com. Subscribe for emails, and hopefully come to a live event, because I love the internet as much as everyone else. It's given us tremendous opportunities, for especially for us peasants who didn't even have a seat at the table for the longest couple of millennia, and now we do. And that said, though, real life is in person, in my opinion, and getting together at events, conferences, retreats. Like, I'm doing this thing to build this thing, and and putting most of the resources pretty much all back into it. So keeping costs low and over serving as much as possible, putting on as many events as possible, and providing as many courses as possible. I can't even go into all the things that we've been able to give for our members to this point. There's a whole even academic course that's underway now that is remarkably would have been remarkably hard to access that kind of information outside of a university graduate program. And so, yeah, the more people join and get on board, the more we can do. So please support the Arcane Research Society.com. And thanks again for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Oh yeah, no, this was great.
Awesome.
Definitely,
Thank you.
definitely have to get you back on in the future, for sure.
Yeah, I think you guys are doing great work.
Trying my best. But yeah, thanks again, and thank you everybody in the chat. That's what's up. We had a bunch of people here. I like all the comments and stuff. That's why we go live. And yeah, that's the end of another Occult Rejects. Until the next one, everybody be well. Later.